Welcome to the Massachusetts School of Law Educational Forum. Thank you for joining us. This program is brought to you by the Massachusetts School of Law and is shown nationwide. Today we'll discuss the meaning of the word wife. It seems that all of a sudden everybody is talking about wives. We have good wives, we have bad wives, we have first wives, happy wives, desperate wives, and even swap wives. Yet it does seem to me that few women talk much about the meaning of the word wife before they approach the altar. So today we'll talk with Canadian columnist Ann Kingston about her latest book, The Meaning of Wife. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Diane.
Delighted you're here. Also joining us is Karen Propp, a professor and a co-editor of a fabulous book, Why I'm Still Married. This book is a collection of essays on why women marry and why they stay married, as 24 best-selling and award-winning writers explore with passion and honesty the complexity of one of life's most challenging and rewarding relationships. Delighted, Karen, you made the time for us today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Also joining us is Michael L. Coyne, the Associate Dean of the Massachusetts School of Law, also a husband and father of 3 wonderful children. Mike, thank you. And I'm Diane Sullivan, your host for today's program. And let's begin with you. You have a whole book on the meaning of wife. Who is a wife?
Oh, well, a wife is a word we think we understand the meaning of. However, how it resonates in the culture is very, very complicated, as you just sort of illustrated. So who is a wife? A wife, if you look at the current cultural landscape, could be a man, it could be a woman, it could be someone in a non-marital relationship. So it's open season on wives.
Karen.
Who is a wife? I guess a wife is a woman who has signed a marriage contract.
That says she's a wife.
That says she's a wife. In my book, I think there's 24 contributors. We have 24 marriages, 24 wives. There's no one-size-fits-all. Oh.
Mike, tell us about your thoughts on this.
I think a wife is a partner. I think a wife is a companion. And I think a wife is very, very necessary for people to be able to have a happy life. As my wife said on my way here today, she said, everyone should have a wife.
I agree. Where do I sign up?
Exactly.
Okay, so what do we mean by the term we all hear, quote, good wife? Who's a good wife?
Well, I would suggest that if we think of the way we see the wife in the broader culture, Laura Bush would be a classically good wife. Her husband has said as much, and that, speaking to the fact that she does not steal the spotlight. I mean, I don't necessarily subscribe to this point of view. I think a good wife is a wife who's a partner with her, equal partner, but in the sense that and willing to speak up. But I think she is a good illustration, whereas Hillary Clinton was seen to be a not good wife by many people because she dared to see herself as an equal partner with her husband.
I would say that in my book, a good wife is somebody who has worked out a relationship that's good for her within the marriage, and so continues to stay happy and makes her spouse happy as well.
Mike, you have the best wife.
I do. I agree with that, Diane. I have a wife now of over 20 years that we've been very happy with, and I think we do have close to a true partnership that one would find. I think the meaning of wife, depending on who you ask, is going to be different because not everyone looks for the same things, although when we talk to various people, they tend to come back with a lot of common traits that we would find. But as unique as men are and women are, they find hopefully the right partner for them so that that relationship will work for the long term.
Sometimes I think that women think to be a good wife means you have to live a life of subordination. And I worry about that. But let's talk with a very young wife and a very new mother about this very issue. What does the word wife mean to you, Kath?
Well, when I got married, it meant partner and caretaker.
What does it mean now?
More caretaker, less partner.
Yeah. Some people argue that to be, quote, a good wife means that you have to give up your independence and you have to live a life of servitude, which I know you could never do.
No. I think it's more or less a scheduling issue. It's, you schedule whether or not, okay, well, they're going to take a nap at this time, so I can leave the husband alone without too many complaints or too many issues, and I can go get a massage or I can go shopping for myself. as opposed to the Walmart and the Demoulas runs, which are, done on my lunch hour at work.
And the husband sees sometimes as the time out?
Oh yes, that's definitely considered time out. Is when I'm going shopping for the house. That's, well, you're alone. Oh, wait, can you take one of the kids with you? And you only had one. You only had one while you were gone. Of course, the other one was napping, and so was he, but that's a
That's
different
besides the point, Kath.
different issue.
Do you believe that men like demure women?
Most of the time, yeah, because it's quiet. They're quiet. They're reserved. They won't speak up. I'm not quite that person, and so I guess my husband doesn't really like them, but he's used to me now at this point.
Why do you think it is that some women today, unlike yourself, they're skipping getting married, so they're skipping the role of wife and they're going right to motherhood?
Because motherhood is enough of a caretaking job, I think. It takes a lot out of you, and you don't really have that much left, unfortunately, for your husband. So if you get married first, that's why some people wait a few years or a couple years before they have children to kind of get established in the wife-husband role. And then from there, then they have kids, and then the husband kind of falls to the wayside a little bit, which generally, they fall to the wayside as far as they're not getting enough attention for them, what they're used to getting from you. So that you get a little bit less. We don't get much at all, but
But that's another issue.
another issue again.
Your husband, Brian, who is a nice guy, what do you think he thinks of when he thinks of the word wife and the word husband?
I think he thinks wife is, the family unit. I definitely believe that he thinks that I hold most of it together, if not all of it.
Yeah.
And as far as husband, I think that a good husband, for me, realistically, is someone who's there when the times are really rough. I had a rough year, my last child, my last delivery, issues with the pregnancy, and he was there. He was there every time, every doctor's appointment, everything that was going on. So he was there for that, and I think that's realistically what he thinks a husband is there when you really, really need him.
The
Not
rest of
for
the
the everyday stuff.
The rest of the time you can take
That's
care
right.
of.
The everyday stuff is all on you.
What do you foresee it's going to take to celebrate your 50th wedding anniversary in today's troubled times?
A small miracle, a large miracle. Probably a lot of communication, a lot more, as the kids get older, a lot more alone time for us to kind of keeping in touch, not just how was work and what happened with the kids today. More or less, remember why we got married in the first place. Besides just having children, there were many other reasons why. So it's more or less kind of reviewing that constantly, so that you remember why you got married and you think, okay, well, I liked him then, I love him now. Let's kind of keep that going.
Let's work it out.
Yeah.
So that's why women stay married.
Yeah, just the issues that come up, if they're not real, if they're big, they kind of, they work themselves out. The little ones, you kind of let go.
Is being a wife mean that you have to be passive?
Absolutely not. Just look around. Absolutely not. However, I mean, if we look at the way the word has evolved, I think that a lot of people still, it's almost as if it's been, we're still left by the side of the road in the 1950s with June Cleaver, and a lot of people see, the idea, the old resonances of the old meaning of wife still, trickle into the way women and men see what a wife is, and it's completely changed, yet we still have the shadows and echoes of past meanings.
Karen.
One of our contributors is Zizi Packer, a very fine writer and young writer, and her essay is entitled Mr. Packer, Being Mr. Packer. In other words, her husband did not in fact take her surname, but she said she always envisioned having a husband who in fact fulfilled the traditional role of a subordinate wife and helping her with her tasks. And she even jokes that once when she was giving a reading and he was there helping her, somebody mistook him for her assistant. So she sort of turns the word wife up on its head.
We still see wife as a secondary role.
Yes.
Mike, do you think men are looking for a wife who will be subordinate?
I don't think most are. I know that I'm going to take the minority position here, but I don't think most are. I think today men look more for partners than subordinates or someone who's going to sit by passively and just do whatever I want. I think if you think of the role the way we've been talking about the wife as the person that's probably principally in charge of the home, then either you could look at them as either the chief executive officer, and we could probably quarrel about that, but at the minimum, the chief operating officer, the person that is supposed to take care of the groceries, the bills, the kids, their husband, and hopefully work as well, and do all of these things and do them superbly well. Well, that, by anyone's stretch of the imagination, in order to do it well, isn't someone who's passive or subordinate, but someone who's got an awful lot of skill sets and has to juggle so many things at any given time that I don't think, if they're going to do their job well, that they could be passive or subordinate. They may, on occasion, have to defer, but that's not such a bad thing
Count
either,
to
is it?
10. Let's hear from a group of women about the meaning of wife. And when we come back from the break, we'll hear from a few men on that very same issue.
You know, we just had the guys in here, so I'm going to defend the men's honor for a few minutes before I leave here. I'm going to tell you what they said, and you can tell us whether you agree or disagree with what they're looking for in a partner in their relationships for the rest of their life. They told us they would like women who are funny, who are hardworking, a true partner. They're looking for partners. Beautiful factors into it, or at least easy on the eyes. Intelligent, easygoing, Shannon, easygoing. But most importantly, what they told us is not what Professor Sullivan expected to find, but they said that they are looking for true partners and in fact are willing to be partners in the relationship. So if that means sharing equally with whatever tasks need to be done, they're prepared to step up and do it.
And their names are?
Well,
That's what they say.
Okay,
That's usually called engagement.
that's the question. How honest do you think they were? Let me tell you, in my opinion, and maybe she'd say it as well, they profess to be very, very sincere about what they told us.
Well, I have to say that knowing the guys in that room, and they're looking for a beautiful woman, I think their expectations of, based on how that group overall looks, that they're looking for a Cindy Crawford.
Ouch!
I mean, seriously, I think their expectations are a little high. They're not all drop-dead gorgeous men.
But in fairness, I'm not so sure. Beautiful was not as high on the list. We didn't actually ask them to rank them, but there are a lot of other things that were a lot more important to them. Easygoing is significant. Funny. Being able to cooperate and not being oppositional.
To what, golfing?
In what
No! We didn't have them rank the qualities from 0 to 10. But so do you think, do you agree with Professor Sullivan that they're a lot more superficial? They can give you this list, Professor Coyne, but funny and hardworking simply are not in the top 3.
No, right.
You don't believe that?
Well, even if they are in their top 3, they want everything from that list.
Yes,
they want a woman to be
absolutely.
absolutely everything.
Do you? You don't, and you'll settle for men who are just sort of,
No, I think that they all mean well, and they're saying that they're going to be equal partners in this and that. I think they maybe have the intention to do so. I just don't think most of them really have it in.
Well, let me tell you what someone said at the end, and I'm sure that you'll get into it a little more later with Professor Sullivan as well. They said, to some extent, and I agree with this because I see it as well, I think you guys get the short end of the stick these days, and I'll tell you what. You are expected to be the professional partner. Go out, earn me a lot of money, and then when you come home, take care of the kids, cook, and we'll cook and clean some, but most relationships, no, we will, but I'll be honest, the bulk of those duties still falls on you. So, to some extent, and this was said with the guys, to some extent, it is harder for you to be the perfect partner than perhaps my mother's generation or the generation before, because you really are expected to be superwoman. As you heard the list, and it's a pretty impressive list. If you guys could do most of those things, they'd be doing pretty good. Before I leave, help me, because tell me how to be a better partner then. What should they be doing? You tell them what they should do more often. And I'll deliver the message to
They
you.
shouldn't have that standard of the old Angelique commercial, that the woman brings home the bacon, fries it up in a pan, and never lets you forget you're a man. They need to know the reality. That
Why can't that be the reality, though?
Because it is the reality, because the man does not truly make it easy for the woman to be that way. Why should anybody be that way? Is he that way?
Well, but don't you expect them to do all that? Don't you expect them to be a good provider and funny and hardworking and help and do the laundry and do some of the cooking and cleaning? Don't you? I mean, you guys just said that. Aren't you looking for the perfect partner
We've all
too?
been setting our roles. I think it's just starting to change. It started to change in the 70s. I think it's going to take time before it becomes really, truly equal. But I think women were taught, I know I was, how to cook and clean. I had the economics class while the guys had the shop class. I mean, I think it's just something that they're used to, and it's not like they're intentionally going out of their way, because I'm going to give men a little bit of credit, that they're going out of their way to be, chauvinistic, because they're not. It's the way they were raised.
Yeah, I agree. I'm raising 3 boys, 21 to 9, and they all know how to cook. The 9-year-old, they can cook all their meals. They know how to do laundry. They've got their chores. They keep the house clean. They empty the dishwasher. Because I don't want them to grow up having expectations of somebody waiting on them hand and foot.
I'll leave, and you can talk to these guys and find out the truth.
Okay, now that he's gone, between us girls, what are men looking for in a good wife?
Their mother.
Their mother, yeah, that's what I said. And I got scolded, okay? I'm glad you're here. They're looking for mom, right?
They want
Pick
both.
up after them. So they are looking for the beaver cleaver mom, you think?
Yeah, definitely.
They're looking for the mother outside the bedroom, in a wildcat in the bed.
Yeah, they never even brought up sex, okay?
I think that's as much as
they
probably were embarrassed to say.
I think in the beginning of every relationship, they do the equal thing, but then as soon as they get a little bit settled,
Yep.
their ideologies on how the roles should be clearly come out.
It's different when they have kids.
Yeah.
When the first kid is born, everything is different.
How is it different? Are the men,
Because that's when they expect you to actually start doing everything.
okay.
Because prior to that, it's, well, we can equally do this and we can equally do that. But once the kid is born, the more they can work, the more they're working.
The reality is they don't deal as well.
I also think it's once they marry you too, before you have children. I think it's once you get married. The game is different.
What are you looking for in a man?
To stop
Well, it would be
nagging.
nice to come home and have somebody have a dinner waiting for me when I walked in the door, to have dinner ready on the table and say, sit down, how was your day? Have dinner. Not that I not only go to school or I'm working cleaning, that I have to come home after my long day and then cook and then wait for the person that, has probably been home all day and did nothing.
More and more young women today are bypassing wife and going right to mother. Why do you think that's so?
They don't need another child.
Yeah.
I think quite often.
It's easier.
And you don't mind a little child who needs your care, who needs you to take care of them. But to have an adult who needs to be taken care of is just a little too much.
It's almost like a competing thing too, once you start having children, because you don't have enough time to devote to that adult person, and the adult person has totally forgotten how to dress himself and match and use the stove and everything else. And then when you have multiple children running around, I think it becomes a competing factor.
Why is it that women have such a hard time, even if they have CEO aspirations, or they want to be a partner in a major law firm, or they want to be a surgeon coming out of medical school? Why is it that they do not relinquish control of the house? Women still are in the role of taking care of the home.
Because we've been doing it all for so long that we've found ways to make everything work, and we feel like we're the only ones who can do it. We feel like the men with the best of intentions maybe will try, but that they're not going to do it right. The house isn't going to be clean enough, the laundry's going to be all shrunk. whatever. You just you turn into a control freak when you have to do everything. You just turn into one. You can't let it go.
I don't know if that's completely true though, because I know a lot of people hire cleaning services to come in that have jobs because they don't have time to do everything. They have no problem delegating, and I think that's fine.
Well, that's what I was going to say, that today, there's so many more services available that I've had to do that, and I know a lot of people that do. You have to learn how to run it, but let someone else do it. I mean, there are so many places that if you don't have time to come home and cook, you don't have to come home and cook and still provide very nourishing meals, in other words, and you don't even have to provide them. My point is, you can still run a very nice household if the woman does want to do it and feels that it's a responsibility. But you have to give up the control, because there's a lot out there to hire, where my mother, I know, and my aunt has said that, a lot of those things weren't available for them.
Meeting a teen girl online is actually pretty easy. You can go into any chat room and just start talking. Most of the girls are usually so insecure and desperate for attention.
Attention from older guys is totally flattering. They're so much more mature and understanding than the guys my age.
Age actually works to my advantage. They like to brag to their friends that they're dating an older guy, so I just play along and pretend I'm really
Interested in the same things I am. You can talk forever and really get to know someone without worrying about looks or whatever. That's the best thing about
Chatting seems unthreatening to them, so they lower their guard. After a while, I start talking about how we're soulmates and how lucky we are to have found each other.
Other people don't understand. I know what I'm doing. If you really care about each other, there's nothing wrong with me.
Meeting them is the goal. Once I get them out of their house, well, that's when things get really interesting.
Online predators know what they're doing. Do you?
Once they've outgrown their toddler seat, they're still not ready for adult safety belts alone. 4'9" is the magic number. Until then, kids need a booster seat. Make sure your little pumpkin gets there safely. Visit boosterseat.gov.
There's something about you, baby. I can't get enough. There's something about you, baby. I got you looking at me, I'm gonna call you bluff. There's something about you.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. It takes a man to be a dad.
To the morning light.
I think a lot of people at my age these days aren't really looking for a spouse, whether it's a male or female, right away. I only know one of my friends that's actually married right now. But I mean, personally, I think I definitely look for somebody that presented a little bit of a challenge. And what I mean by that is somebody who wasn't exactly the same as I was, because then things might be too easy and get a little monotonous. One of my friends said one time that, you know, she was dating a guy and it just was easy for her and it just became boring. And if that happens as quickly as that did, then I guess we wouldn't want somebody who's boring and the same as you are when you get married.
Joe, if and when you get married, do you envision a partnership, a true 50-50 partnership?
I mean, I would hope so. Like I said a little while ago, I haven't quite thought that far ahead yet. But I think that just goes back to everything else. If I'm doing 100%, there's not that there's going to be a zero on her side, but if it's slanted one way or the other, it's probably not going to be fun for the other person or easy for the other person to be with me or them at the same time. I know not everything is probably going to be 50-50 every given day of the week. I mean, I'm not going to be the one having the kids, but I'll definitely be there for everything else.
Good comment. Joe, will your wife have her own career, or do you envision a stay-at-home wife?
Well, if I went by my family model, then she would probably be a stay-at-home wife. Growing up Italian, I think the stereotype says it all. The Italian mother stays at home, she watches the kids, she does the cooking, and that's it. They're happy with that. Cooking the meal at the end of the day, my Nonna is very happy with that. She still loves to cook the meal at the end of the day. My mother still cooks the meal at the end of the day. I grew up kind of like my father. Neither of us are great cooks. My brother happened to be the chef in the family. But, you know, if my wife happens to have something else, so be it. You know, I mean, obviously I'll know that when I go into it, and it'll always be a consideration of if it works for both of us.
What are the qualities that make a good wife?
I think you need a person that you can share your life with. I think that person has to challenge you. You can't fall into a rut where you feel complacent. And that's why I tell my wife, you think I enjoy being such a bastard when I come home at night. The reason why I do that is just to keep our marriage alive. But seriously, I think there needs to be some tension in a good manner, in a good way. And you need to constantly challenge one another and share, obviously, your life experiences.
Good comment, Tony. What do you believe makes a happy marriage?
You know, I think that varies from individual to individual. I think what makes my marriage particularly happy is that my wife and I share the same common goals. She has an incredible sense of humor. She can read me like a book. And she can play me like a fiddle. So it makes it very interesting. Every day it seems to be a new challenge.
A new adventure.
A new adventure.
Final question, Tony. What advice will you give your young daughter, Morgan, as she grows to womanhood and contemplates marriage?
Well, I would tell her never let her career interfere with her marriage and motherhood, but never let marriage and motherhood interfere with her career. I think she needs to have both options to be a well-rounded person and to deal with any eventuality that may occur.
Welcome back to the Educational Forum, where we're discussing the meaning of the word, quote, wife. Something you wanted to say.
Well, I was just going to respond to Mike's point, which was, I think, a very good one in theory, which is that women should be treated as the executive officer of the home. Unfortunately, in practice, they're not paid like the executive officer. They're paid more like domestic labor, which is minimally.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point.
Karen, let's talk about why women stay married. Your collection of essays. What do you conclude? Why do women stay married?
Well, again, there's no one reason why women stay married. I think each woman has their own reason. Hannah Pine, who is our writer, who is in an open marriage, says she remains married simply because she still loves her husband. I am a believer in marriage, and I believe that one of the reasons to stay married is that it's a way to, when you're living with another person in such proximity over a long term, you learn things and you grow in ways that you would not, even if it's a struggle, especially if it's a struggle.
Mike, why do you and Jeannie stay married?
I think we love each other. Isn't that why most
That's
people
the answer I'm looking for.
You know, there's a whole bunch of things that goes into a long-term relationship. But let's hope it starts at the core, which is we love each other, we love our children, and I think we generally love being together. There are times when we could kill each other, just like every other marriage, I'm sure there are. But I think because the alternatives are so bad.
Although I want to say that in studies of divorce, it's usually said that the two people still do love each other, so it's not for lack of love.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that that love is going to be the thing that solves every problem, and there has to be respect. There has to be a whole bunch of other things involved. But at the core, hopefully, the parties still love each other, respect each other, and want each other to be partners for the rest of their lives.
Recently, I had an opportunity to speak with a woman who's been married for 42 years. Let's hear what she has to say. What does the word wife mean to you?
Hard question. Seems so simple, but it really is not. A companion, a partner, 50-50 relationship, a togetherness, lots of different things based on, different from what I thought they would be 40-some years ago, from what I see that they are now. But basically, it's, I guess I view it as a match set. one half of a duo going into this 100% together.
Louise, what do you believe marriage means to your daughters who are in their 30s now? It's hard to believe.
It's a generation thing. They think very differently about it. I think when we got married, we meaning people of my generation, in growing up in the 50s, getting married in the 60s, there was no turning back. It really was a commitment, a lifetime commitment. It truly was till death do us part. I don't want to say that currently people feel that, oh, well, I'll give it a try, and if it doesn't work out, I'll go on to something else. But I think there is always that safety net, I think they feel in the background, that, well, if it really doesn't work, I can make it on my own. I'm not sure that women of my generation ever felt that they could make it on their own. I think they really felt that they were an appendage, not a whole being. It changed. It definitely changed as women my age went back to work and became much more career-oriented than we started out being. But I think initially we went into this as we left our parents' home and we went to our husband's home. There was no period in between when we were on our own. There was no feeling that we could ever do it on our own. My daughters don't feel that way. They're much more independent. They know they can take care of themselves. They can earn a living themselves. They can be happy by themselves. And I think this is probably in the long run a much healthier way to go into a marriage.
It was interesting when I asked you what a wife is today. You said 50-50 partnership. Do you think that most marriages are really 50-50? I know we're just speculating, but to me I always thought the women seem to carry a little bit more than 50%, but I could be wrong on that.
Perhaps of the actual doing on a day-to-day basis. Well, again, that depends on the individual home. I mean, I know husbands who do the grocery shopping and do the laundry and do the cleaning, and it's 25-75 in his favor. But I think it's much more, I think it's much more of a togetherness than it used to be. My parents' generation, my mother stayed home, she made supper, she did the laundry, she cleaned the house. My father went out and earned a living. And that's the way things were in the 30s and the 40s. Yeah, I certainly in the important things in decision making, I see that women have a much more emphatic role than they used to. I think they're considered much more than they were, certainly in my parents' generation. My generation, I think, is, and certainly my daughter's generation. It's, everything is done, every decision, major decision in their lives with their husbands is made together for the most part, as far as I know, as far as they tell me.
What advice did you give your daughters before their wedding day?
I don't think they were interested in taking my advice. My daughters were in their 30s when they got married, and they had had friends who had been married before them and been around us and our friends, and I think they had an idea of what they wanted in marriage. In many instances, it was probably some of the things that their father and I had, and other things it was things that they saw that they didn't like about our marriage. I don't think they really wanted to hear.
What advice do you have for a young woman in the audience about being a wife or being a mother or marriage in general?
It's worth doing. It's, there's some marvelous, it's wonderful to be able to look at someone across the table and have a history with them. I look at my husband, and I'm looking at this face that I've been looking at for 43 years. It's like looking in the mirror. I know his face better than I know my own. I'm not always happy with it, as he's not always happy with me. It isn't 100% wonderful every minute of the day, but I couldn't imagine it any other way.
So as we just saw, based on your comments, Mike, many women stay married for love. But I'm curious what brought them to the altar in the first place. Now, from the time we're little girls, many of us dream of being a bride. How much does that contribute to girls getting married?
Well, I think that the idea of little girls dreaming of being a bride is the absolute fuel that, you know, in the marital, sort of the wedding industrial complex, as I called it in my book, where women are, you know, the myth that the little girl's dream is as valid, you know, for an adult. It's a bit of an infantilization of women in a sense, the idea that what they dream of. But I think that women do, you know, you do want to marry, but I think that what happens is that the bride has become this kind of consumer object. It's a romantic objective as opposed to a practical one, which perhaps creates, you know, everybody wants to be a bride, nobody really wants to be a wife.
I want to say it's true that I do see, you know, 4-year-old girls who want to be a bride, want to play a bride, want to dress as a bride. But then you look at all the Disney movies and how much they feed that image. So the little girls aren't just getting it out of thin air.
I agree with you, but I do think that Disney is part of that whole romantic complex.
Oh yeah, no, I mean
that drives the culture.
Yes, so I mean the more the little girls watch the Disney and the less they hear about the, you know, Cinderella who wants to open a recycling business with her prince rather than wear the glass slipper. But I have a friend who says that the bigger the wedding, the bigger the cry for help from the couple. You know, that it's not really about the trappings. And I think women can get lost in just wanting to have a big show.
The bridal vortex.
Yeah.
Mike, you have a young daughter who is a very good athlete. Do you think she dreams of being a bride?
I don't know. I hope she dreams of going to college. I'm sure she dreams of that. A good career, succeeding, and I hope if she wants it, it's on her list. But I hope it's one of her, not her top priorities.
Yeah, it's down there always.
One of the things that I noticed when I was doing my book, and I did a chapter on the whole industrial complex, is that what's fascinating is traditionally the role of wife was one of being subsumed in a marriage under coverture, which is the idea that you absolutely assume your husband's identity. The woman was subsumed. Now it seems that's been transferred, that at a time when a lot of women are in fact questioning or rejecting marriage as being they're necessarily ideal. They want a career, they want to go to school. We're fixated on the idea of little girls dreaming of being brides as opposed to astronauts or Supreme Court judges. And I think that what happens is you've got this complex where women become subsumed, they're consumed in a different way, and it just absolutely engulfs them and throws everything off kilter.
Something you were starting to bring up, that is, there is such a disconnect between the idea of being a bride and the reality of being a wife, the latter happening the day the honeymoon is over.
That's right. It's this little portal you crawl through, and you go from being this, you've had the day, the best day of your life. You've had the day that all cameras are fixed on you. The idea of theater, your wedding is theater, which is absolutely ridiculous when you think about it. And then the next day, it is a Cinderella. You see, that's why Cinderella is such a perfect metaphor for the bridal industry, because she, nobody knows what happens the day after the prince, rescues her, and that's the idea. The fairy tale always ends with the marriage. Look at Charles and Diana. We got to see that fairy tale played out, but generally we don't.
Well, I have to say that is why my co-editor and I planned our book. We wanted to have real women writing about real marriages, giving a realistic portrayal that did not follow the script of the fairy tale.
Unfortunately, a lot of women still, the script is all we have. We need to sort of realize shouldn't be a script out there.
Well, I mean, it's just we need more and more departures from the script and more
absolutely
just people telling their stories to show just how unreal how unreal that script is.
Go ahead,
Mike.
Well, I still think, as obviously there are negative aspects to everything. I still think most people who stay married are happy in those marriages.
I agree with you, and
most marriages still survive. That's the interesting thing. We focus on the high divorce rate, but there's still, people benefit from the marital institution in all sorts of ways.
And people who divorce often go on to remarry. So.
And do they remarry happily?
Well, in my book, the people who have been married multiple times, yes, are happiest in their present relationship, and I think they've been married for 15, 20 years, so it's not just another try at things. And I think people like Marge Piercy, Erica Jong, Julia Alvarez, who have been married a number of times, definitely learned from their first marriages. So.
Panel, we need to take a break. To our viewing audience, please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hello. Yes. Can I ask a few questions about the apartment on Park Street?
What was your name?
My name? My name is Juan Hernandez.
It's been rented.
Who is gone? Hello, my name is Sanjay Kumar. I am calling about the apartment on Park Street.
It's not available.
Not available? Hello, my name is Tyrone Washington. I'm calling about the apartment on Park Street.
Just been rented.
Hello, I am Chen Ling. My name is Khalid bin Ali. I'm Tuan Vo. Hello, my name is Moshe Goldberg. I use a wheelchair. It's gone. Not available. All right. Thank you. Yes, hello, my name is Graham Wellington. I'm calling about the apartment for rent on Park Street. Is that still available?
Yes, it is.
What is?
Yes.
Really?
Housing discrimination is illegal. If you think you've been a victim because of your race, color, national origin, sex, religion, disability, or family status, call us. Fair housing. It's not an option. It's the law.
Can I help you, sir?
Found these over by the stairs.
Okay, thank you.
What are they?
Love handles. Lots of people lose them taking the stairs instead of the escalator.
Yes, you are. Come here. Let's see how this looks.
Hey, how's my little horse?
She's a lion.
Yes, she is.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. When you adopt a child from foster care, just being there makes all the difference.
You are a husband and a father.
Correct.
What does the word wife mean to you?
Well, I got married when I was 36, and honestly, I can't think of anything except Mary Ellen. Wife means to me my wife, the only wife I've ever had, and as soon as you said that word, it's inevitably connected with her. So wife is Mary Ellen. It means my dearest friend, the person I love the most in the world, the one who shares all the pain and pleasure, my partner in everything. And and it's Mary Ellen because it's been Mary Ellen since we met in 1978. So wife is Mary Ellen.
What a wonderful answer. What about the word husband?
I have a watch, I have a wedding ring. That's my jewelry. And and I do that because I'm proud to be a husband. I'm proud to be Mary Ellen's husband. And this is Mary Ellen. Every time I look at it, feel it, you know, we're connected. But you raised something interesting. I'm angry. I love women. I think men have a lot to learn. And I admire those men who really try to be loving, kind, compassionate, and caring husbands. And I am profoundly embarrassed and distressed by men who are brutes and animals, insensitive and awful. I find, generally speaking, that women and wives, I admire them more. And I find that a lot of men and a lot of husbands I don't admire. So I feel a little self-conscious. When I think about wife and woman, I feel pretty much all positive. When I think about men and husband, I realize that a lot of, there's some negativity in there. So, but for me, husband, it's me, and I'm almost defensive when I say husband, and I'm a good one, is what I want to say to people.
My final question, why do people stay married?
I think that depends on the marriage. I think that I I'm going to guess that more people stay married for good reasons than used to. That they're staying together because they genuinely love each other and they wouldn't think about, you know what it is? I think about second marriages. And this is part of it that embarrasses me as a man. Why is it so many times that husband and wife together, they work hard, blah, 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 the guy gets very successful, husband is very successful, divorces the wife, picks up a young babe, happy with a second family. What the hell is going on? I hope that there is a really strong group of men and women who are married who say, oh my God, hasn't this been no matter what life has thrown at us, we are in this together. We took our public vows and we said this is what we want and we stay together. But I'm afraid there also are marriages where, bam, it's a divorce. And there are also marriages where, although not as much as before, you know, the love is gone, but we're kind of just going to hang on.
So it covers a
I do.
spectrum.
I think it does, although I suspect because divorce is, I'm hoping that because divorce seems to be pretty easy to do, that those who stay married are doing so for because they couldn't have it and wouldn't want it any other way.
Welcome back to the Educational Forum, where we are discussing wives, marriage, and anything else that relates to the topic. Michael, as the dean of a law school, it seems to me that women today, many are foregoing the husband, at least initially, in favor of earning their own income. Do you see that in your law classes?
Yeah, as a professional career, Diane. I mean, more and more women now populate law school. When I was in Boston as a lawyer, the senior partner at the law firm was a woman. But she was one of the 3 or 4 women in her class in Boston University Law School in the 1960s. Today at our law school and most law schools throughout the United States, what you're seeing is at least 50% of the population are females. More and more women are looking for a professional career, whether it be law or whether it be as a physician. And I think they're foregoing, for at least for a period of time, that early marriage and hope, you know, the fantastic wedding that you had talked about.
Oh, I want.
Sorry.
Okay, should I? Can I
Go
say?
ahead, Karen.
I want to say that there's been some studies recently. I know Linda Hirschman has come out with a study of the brides on the New York Times bridal pages, and a huge percentage of them, after getting those law degrees, those medical degrees, those MBAs, give it up to stay at home with the kids and be wives and mothers. And she talks about sort of the dangers of that to both society, because after all that work has been put into their degrees, and also to the women too. It's sort of a conundrum.
Part of the problem, though, Karen, is that the biological clock ticks along with that educational curve. So the woman comes to a point where, when she's done medical school or law school, gee, I really gotta decide if I'm going to have kids. Now's a good time. So
That's right. There's no such thing as a part-time partner at a law firm.
Well, I think that's what I was saying in the beginning about. That's what I said before about it depends on the job. I mean, a lawyer definitely, especially a trial lawyer, it's hard to just work, to limit the number of hours, yeah.
Which an issue I believe you raise in your book is the more money a woman tends to make, the less likely she is to have a husband, and clearly the less likely she is to have kids.
Well, it's a very circular issue. It's not you know, sort of a black and white thing, but going back to the question, why don't women marry? It's because they don't need to, or they don't want to, or they don't get the opportunity. I mean, it's a multiple choice answer there. But at the same time, we do know that women who, you know, are not married make more money because they can focus on their career. The you know, corollary to that is that men who do marry make more money.
Yeah.
So that it's an interesting, the balance works out. It's just, it's skewed slightly.
Yeah. I mean, I also wanted to say that I don't think it's only a question of the number of hours required. I think there's something in the women too that is drawn to the wife, to being a wife and a mother, as well.
Well,
You know, I think it's something internal as well as an external demands of the profession.
I think if you look at broadly at society, that's true. But I get very nervous when I hear talk of what women, that women are drawn to at a particular thing. The way that we don't hear about women being drawn to powerful positions, which speaks again to the idea of becoming a wife, which is not seen as a power position in the culture.
Yeah.
We're very nervous about women who have more power than their husbands do. We don't quite know where they fit into the grid. I mean, look at Teresa, Heinz Kerry, and the fact that she became a Kerry during the presidential election. So it's an interesting question.
I don't mean like there's some innate feminine need or something like that. I just mean that some of the messages of our culture are go to law school, get that degree, meet the lawyer, and then the cultural expectations kind of end.
So that's a new fairy tale.
Yes, exactly. I'm saying that's a new fairy tale, right.
But I think, Diane, from our research and our conversations with both men and women at the law school, they both think that they can have it all at this point. They both think that they can have the perfect career, the perfect family, and the perfect partner. And they are setting out to try and do that. Now, whether they ultimately are able to achieve that because of the choices they ultimately have to make with who's going to stay home with the kids more often, who stays home when they're sick, who's going to court today, and all the rest of it, those are choices that they're going to have to work out, and probably going to fall more still, even with this partnership, on the woman's shoulders than the man. But they both talk about wanting it all.
But this is where the idea of the cultural script comes into play, because I think what happens, and what all sorts of studies have shown, is that even the most progressive, egalitarian couples, once they get married, they fall into the notion that of woman nurturer, the one who deals with the child's illness and the various other things, and the sacrifice, the maternal sacrifices that are made, as opposed to we don't see paternal sacrifices. We are increasingly in the culture, but we still see the idea that the woman is the one who handles that end of it, and as a result, she can't possibly rise the ranks in the same way that her husband could.
I actually don't dispute that for the most part. I mean, I do think that still, when push comes to shove, if we both had court, I had to go. If Jeannie had court and I didn't, then I would stay home. But when the choice fell, when there were harder choices to fall, they still fell more on her shoulders than mine. But I don't dispute that.
A little bit of a different topic, but contributes to this whole thing, is the social stigma still today on women staying single. You think that's true?
Isn't there a stigma on both of them staying single? I mean, don't we say he's 35, 40 years old and he's still
an
not
old
married?
bachelor.
I think he's a commitment phobe. He's a toxic bachelor. There's all sorts of questioning that goes on, even though he's still desirable. But at the same time, it's
we do it to both of them.
Except he doesn't care because he sees himself as a stud. The woman sees herself as an old maid. Isn't that still
well,
true?
I think there's a lot of stereotypes. I mean, I think the woman can be the old maid. She can also be the irresponsible, harlot out on the town every night.
Well, the way I see it, we've developed the Jones continuum. At one end is Bridget Jones, who's worried of dying alone, being eaten by a dog, being found sort of dead, and at the other end we have Samantha Jones of Sex and the City, who's this fabulous single who's enjoying consuming men, real estate, and I think that we've gotten again a new form of stereotyping for singles. I think no more advanced than the idea of the old maid and the confirmed bachelor.
And in fact, and we were talking in the car on the way over, that being not married is an active estate as being married. It's not necessarily a default position. I think I'm taking Anne's words. That's a great phrase, and it's as multifaceted and rich and interesting as being married.
We're sort of behind the times, and when it comes, singles are reframing the whole grid. I talk about this in my book, the idea of the unwife and what that means in terms of female identity, because there is that big question. If a woman isn't a wife, then somehow something's missing. And I think it's true of men too, but we're behind it. The single life is percolating
it's just beginning to be talked about.
Exactly.
Well, single women are the largest growing demographic.
Exactly.
In addition, they're the biggest consumer
They're the
block
new
in
yuppies.
Exactly.
in the Western world.
And they're being targeted.
And they keep track of politics. They vote.
Major homeowners. Women are not waiting for the prince, and we sort of don't realize that the way we're talking about it, we haven't quite caught up to that fact.
Do you worry about that, women not waiting for the prince?
I worry about women being the largest consumer block all the time.
I knew something was percolating over there. All right. In the final analysis, do men prefer demure women?
No, again, you and I have talked about this briefly before. I think that that is a complete misconception. We want many things in a partner. Easygoing, I think I'd rank up there a little higher, but demure, I think we like a challenge. Frankly, I think we like a challenge as much as you folks like a challenge.
Ladies, what do you think?
You've got quite a responsibility there, speaking in the we, in the royal we.
That's right. I'm defending all men everywhere.
I think it's absolutely true. I think men absolutely, no one wants a doormat in their lives. I think that that's absolutely true. I think that but that said, you want kindness too, and sensitivity. So.
And you want compassion or empathy. I mean, I think that men and women want the same thing in many ways. More of the same thing, a different thing.
Do you believe that many women who choose to stay single see marriage as a straitjacket?
I think that yes. My research absolutely points to that. I think that we look at divorce as almost a form of liberation. If you look at the way it's portrayed, it's as though you're reborn when you're divorced. Karen and I were talking about women who talk about divorce envy, long married women. So I think that there is again a romanticization of, even though a single is stigmatized, the idea that it's also the ultimate in self-expression, which is very much valued.
Karen?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was talking about divorce envy. We were saying that it's almost the same as, envy for being married, and that just because you get divorced from this person who you think is ruining your life, doesn't mean that that everything's solved. There's still bumps in the road, perhaps more bumps in the road.
We are quickly running out of time, so I would like to ask all of you for your final comments for the audience. What do you want people to take away from your book?
I think what I hope people take away from my book is that wife is a very complicated role tied to female identity in ways we have not investigated, and that's what I try to do in the book, is look at that across the spectrum, from the bridal industry to domesticity to sex to domestic abuse to the new legal realities of being a wife.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Karen?
I'd say what I have to say is along the same lines. I would add that I think married women and single women also need to talk more about what it is really like to be inside either state. I think that there just needs to be more open conversation, and because our book is so honest, I'm hoping that it will encourage other women to be equally honest with one another.
Michael?
I think we, myself included, have to be more mindful of the sacrifices that wives make, not just for their husband's benefit, but the children, if there are any, and others as well.
Thank you all for joining me here today. To our viewing audience, until next time, be well and thanks.